I'm Instructor Jason, one of the instructors at Krav Maga Self-Defense. You'll hear the phrase, you don't rise to the occasion, but fail to the level of your training. This phrase has its roots in ancient wisdom, often attributed to the Greek poet Archilochus, who lived 2,500 years ago. This is often quoted in the military or the sports context, but it's applicable to several fields, including self-defense. So this topic will include several principles that we've talked about in the previous videos, namely OODA loop and freezing, effective practice, and finishing modes. So the complete phrase is under pressure. You don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training. So it's pretty transferable, you sink or fall. The key word being under pressure, which implies the presence of stress and stimuli. In the OODA loop video that we did before, we talked about freezing. And it's pretty much not knowing what to do because our brain is scanning our memory for options. In a more extreme content, our brain is scanning our memory for options because we don't know what to do and it's seeking out what to do from our memory, our internal database. In a more extreme context, it could just be fear or shock, fear and or shock. Regular and effective training will help with preventing freezing because you expand the database of scenarios and defenses in your memory that your brain can call upon as a response. So going back to that OODA loop topic, with the regular training, you're expanding your database of responses. So the next time situations or scenarios happen to you, your brain sees that entry in memory and says, okay, this is what we apply to solve this problem. Lacking that, that's when people start to freeze because your brain can't find or choose an option to find from memory. So, which shows you sinking or falling to the level of training. If that's all you know, then and scenarios come in that you're not familiar with, that's where the freezing happens, right? And of course, the stress and the stimuli, so you're under pressure. The regular training also lessens the stress factor because the stress inoculation makes you more accustomed to the stress. Hence, you are in a calmer disposition when an actual incident occurs. So you're used with stress inoculation in the training, you'll start slowly getting used to working or operating under pressure. And that helps you simply being used to it. You being more used to it, you're less stressed, you're less in a panic, and you're calmer. You can think better and come up with think of better tactical options to deal with the scenario. In the effective practice video, we talked about frequent repetitions and visualization. So this also helps with that level of training because it enhances your preparedness. And hence a term that's been thrown around with that being muscle memory. So that also comes into part for expanding the options your brain can scan in the memory, but also executing them well or at a certain level of proficiency that you can perform under pressure or under the stress or stimuli. In the finishing modes video that we mentioned in the past, we talked about the different options you can do post-incident or leading to post-incident, hence it's called finishing mode. If you regularly practice the different options for finishing mode in your training regime, this reinforces the knowledge and skill, which will be more easily recalled when the actual incident occurs. So, yeah, it's not just as all you practitioners know when we train. Every time you practice a technique, you practice a defense, and you apply your counterattacks, and then a finishing mode. But if you just keep practicing the one finishing mode, then you're not expanding your database in your memory. So try to practice all these different finishing modes as much you can. So um, come the real incident happens, you don't have a freeze or a semi-freeze wherein you go, your body will automatically run this way, but then there's a wall there or there's an obstruction, and you can easily adapt to the environment of that scenario or whatever other circumstances show up during the incident, and so be able to deal with it. So the application of the phrase is quite based on frequent and rigorous training. Hence, the level of your training will be at the level of your expectations or even higher. So, simply put, the quality of your training, how often you train, will basically be the level, as they said, the level you sink to. If it is high, it might be at par or maybe even higher than rising to the occasion. So in the end, you put in the rigorous training, you put in the hours, but quality training too. Don't just think reps. If you have the quality training where you're a bit dynamic as well, you put in a dynamic environment, different finishing modes, different scenarios, then you've expanded your memory, the database your brain can choose from. All these options you can choose from depending on what you see. Going back to OODA loop, referring back to OODA loop, what you see, and the response comes out. Right? But in some circumstances, I do believe individuals can rise to the occasion, going above their level of training. So this may refer more into an emergency services or combat situation. And I believe the key to this is the stress inoculation. So if you have, well, for us, with the regular training, summary drills in our classes, you receive that stress inoculation. So you're getting accustomed to stress, you're getting accustomed to operating under stress, um, fighting tired, surprised, all these different stressors and stimuli and you're operating under those circumstances, the calmer you are when an actual stressful incident happens. And why I think this applies more to emergency services or military sort of like combat role things, because there's only so much you can train. Let's say like police will be training whatever different techniques they have at a limited sort of capacity from academy or whatever pre-approved program they have. But what happens out there in the street, there's all these, the universe will throw all these curveballs. So anything that happens out there will not exactly be the scenarios you've practiced at academy before or what they've taught you. They try to make it as real world as possible, but the real world is so vast. There's no way you can go through any scenario. So it has to be a bit principle driven. But I digress. That individual who's dealing with a problem out in the street has this repertoire of techniques, although the situation is not sort of like a direct, those techniques are not directly applicable to the scenario they're dealing with. But if they have enough stress inoculation, they can remain calm and think straight during that scenario and be able to think of tactical options to achieve their objective, whether it's to evacuate people or arrest multiple people, arrest this person, an armed person, all those different things. So hostage scenario possible. Uh, so that this is where I think it is still possible to rise to the occasion, because not everything that happens will be exactly what you've trained. Like, you try to foresee all the scenarios, but in the real world, anything goes, anything happens, right? And and that's how it is. So pretty much, if someone is more accustomed to operating under stress, they are calmer and can think better. They can consider their objectives and choose the right actions to achieve it. Pretty much. Um, we'll put a few more examples. Let's say, like, why I think this may still apply to sort of like civilian, where um, we we train, but sometimes you're with your family or you're with someone. Yeah, you have a third party you have to protect and consider to escape with, right? It's not just you going solo where I can outrun this guy or I can outwit this guy. It's fine, but no, you can't just go on your own because you have someone to take care of and have to take with you or consider and save as well. So those are some curveballs that can happen. And if you have that stress inoculation, you're calmer, you can think clearer, and ideas can come up, and more tactical. You can think of more tactical options to deal with the problem. With more sort of emergency services, that can sort of like expand a bit more. So, like, let's say for police, they're not operating alone. You got to worry about your partner, your offsider, and all that. But also, you're there for the public. You have to. They there for the public, so they have to come in, evacuate the public. You have to be calm under the stress. All this chaos is happening. You have to keep calm, and they have to think objectively, think of tactic, think of options. How do we evacuate this large group of people in a safe way? How do we pave a way for the other emergency services to come in? Whatever is happening, could be the fire and rescue, paramedics, ambulance, and all that. SES, traffic management center, all those things. Or you could be the senior on the truck and you have your rookie, you have your probationary constable with you. You got to look after this less experienced probationary constable that's sort of under your wing. So those are other factors you have to consider, other teammates too. So these are the moments where having the proper amount of stress inoculation and you being calm under pressure, being able to think of tactical options, then to address the situation, that's when I think you can rise to the occasion, right? Because there's no unless there's a really comprehensive training program out there, they won't be able to train all scenarios. There'll be similar ones, and you can sort of crisscross the concepts and principles of it and have similar solutions, but you can't tackle all. And even if there was a training program to tackle everything, that would take forever to finish because there'll probably be so many scenarios. So, all those things. Yeah. So those are one of my opinions where you can rise to the occasion, having that proper disposition and being able to do tactical decision making in specific situations. So yeah, that's a little good rundown on the phrase "you don't rise to the occasion, you fail to the level of your training," which is quite true. Although the other part, I think there's some cases where you can rise to the occasion, but there's a level of preparedness there too, which kind of dabbles a bit on your level of training. But yeah, that does happen. Some sort of improvisation opportunities there. To learn more KMG self-defense techniques, train with us at KravMagaSelfDefense.com.au.